was. So thanks, Laura, for the reminder. Sorry for keeping everyone waiting.
It's hard to believe that it's the 1st of June, I know. Has anybody heard from, Ron Evans? He is gone missing as well, so. But we're gonna go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, for coming and joining us here tonight. Begin with a roll call, and I'll start with, Counselor Hall.
Present.
Counselor, Board Member Hall, there we go. Board Member Nielsen. Here. And Board Member Schofield.
Here,
And I'm Tim Kirsch as a board member, chairman of the board. Absent is Tony Moronis, he had business, and then Ron Evans is just missing. So anybody with any potential conflicts of interest with anything on tonight's agenda, please state it for the record. If nothing comes to mind at this time, but something pops up later in the meeting, be sure and speak up at that time. Announcements, we're gonna open up the meeting. If anybody has any announcements that they would like to make. I don't see anything on there. I'll make one quick announcement, and I believe that they've set a date for a groundbreaking little ceremony coming up soon here in June, but I left my phone with my calendar on it at home, so I forget exactly what day it is. I'm thinking it's late here in June, the 25th?
Yep.
25th, it sounds like we're gonna do a groundbreaking at noon for the sewer plant site. So I believe anybody's welcome to come to that. Public comment. Anybody have any public comment that they would like to add to the board? I'm not seeing anybody out there on the Zoom land. So we're gonna move on from that. There is no old business. Our new business will be an approval of the May summary notes. Any question from anybody on the board about the May summary votes?
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the summary votes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Emily, you and I?
I'm an I, finding my mute button. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a pass of the summary notes. Item E on our agenda is the 2025-02 resolution to transfer funds from contingency to materials and services. Let's see here. Do we have any kind of discussion on that?
I can speak to that since Mr. Evans isn't here.
Okay,
So at the last board meeting, Mr. Evans advised that in order to pay the latest invoice from your attorneys, Cable Houston, he would need funding, authorization to move funding from contingency into materials and services. You have to do that by resolution because you're changing funds from contingency to materials and services. If you wanted to move more than the amount of 7350, that would represent more than 10% of your total appropriations. And when you do that, you would trigger a supplemental budget process. So the proposal here is that you transfer just shy of 10% of your total appropriations. Sorry, not 10%, 15% of your total appropriation. And that would allow you to move that amount. So 10% of your appropriations would be about $7,800. And so, or sorry, 15% of your total appropriations would be $7,800. And so staff has suggested that you move 7,350 from contingency into materials and services. That will allow him to pay Cable Houston. And so if there aren't any questions, then you would need a motion to do that.
do we have any questions on this proposed resolution concerning our budget?
I move we approve the resolution transfer funds from contingency to materials and services.
Second?
We have a motion and a second, for approval of the resolution. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. I'm gonna turn it over to staff now. Laura Conroy is gonna give our staff report.
Yeah, so we don't have a treasurer's report, so I will offer, I hope Ron is okay. It's not like him to have, not sent the treasurer's report
Yeah.
along and not appear, so. We'll reach out to him after the meeting and make sure he's okay.
Yes.
So I have some updates about even sooner than the May 30th report for NSSA. As you know, the Marion County Board of Commissioners has declined to provide additional funding for NSSA out of their economic development funds. They had provided the initial, I think it was 150, this was before my time, and then the additional 80. And the good news is that Lynn County has signaled interest in providing some support. We submitted a proposal to them. It looked a lot like the proposal that we sent to Marion County earlier this year. The proposal basically requests $90,000 between for the fiscal year 25-26, and then another $100,000 for 26-27. That would help you with your administration, with your audit, with any legal fees, and with some operator help. It assumes that you're going to get some operator financial support through either a mutual aid agreement with another city or another body, maybe some support through other funds. So I spoke with the Lynn County Administrator today. He let me know that he had the proposal, and asked if I had been in contact with commission, or anyone from this board had been in contact with Commissioner
Nyquist or
Nyquist and Will
Tucker?
Tucker, thank you. The last name was escaping me. Commissioner Tucker. I have not been in contact with him. I asked Mayor Kirsch if he had been in contact with him. Neither of us have been, so we will follow up. But the administrator was hopeful that the proposal would be considered and included in their budget once Commissioner Tucker's questions were answered. And one of the questions that the administrator thought Commissioner Tucker had is how many more requests are we going to be entertaining? Is this a one-time request? Is there a plan to become sustainable? I was able to tell the administrator, yes, they plan to be able to pay for their operators and their administration and whatnot through their rates once the plant is up and running and their rates are established. I said it would be helpful if we had some help while we're waiting for Gates to come online, because of course the Gates ratepayers are part of that picture. But felt comfortable saying that we could amend the proposal to clarify or add some clarification that says this is, a 2-year request, and maybe another round, maybe another 2-year request after that, just to help us get Gates online and maybe even Detroit online. But that eventually, when these facilities became operational, that the cost would be assumed by the ratepayers. So that was positive. And so Mayor and I will try to track down Commissioner Tucker and get his questions
He's at a
answered.
conference right now, so,
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the funding update, which was good news. In terms of your permitting pathway meetings, and I see that Mary and Chris Imo are on the call, so I won't say too much about that, other than to say that there was a second Rules Advisory Committee meeting on May 22nd. That the Confederated Tribe and others continue to have technical questions about the project. That COG has offered to the tribe to convene a technical conversation. And thus far, the tribe has said we'd really prefer to have it at the rack. So just know that the COG and this body, NSSA, have offered to have that permit-focused technical conversation, outside the rulemaking process, and kind of the way to think about that is you establish the rule, and then you let the agency, apply the rule to the fact-specific circumstance. And some members of the RAC seem to be wanting to have the application of the eventual rule conversation now. And so, of course they do, that makes sense. It's helpful to understand how the rule may function in application. Not always appropriate for a rulemaking conversation, so COG is offered again to kind of do that technical convening. So far, again, they've preferred to have it with the RAC. I think the EQ is, we'll let Mary speak to that, has some thoughts about how they're gonna try to assist with that. But, lastly, in terms of legislative efforts, as we told you last meeting, Senate Bill 1189 was signed by the governor. That allows you to begin construction. There are 31 days left in the legislative session. Although we are hopeful and confident that the rulemaking process will be thorough, and that a 3-basin rule update that will allow this facility to be permitted will result of that. I will say that I have had some light conversations about whether we need to consider a legislative pathway to a 3-basin rule update, because you are 31 days short of sine die, and you need a permit in order to permit this facility. And you will not have another legislative session in time, if for some reason the rulemaking process, the EQC, isn't able to get a rule in play soon. So, there have been some conversations about that. And I will say, as at the COG, have had those conversations. They haven't gone anywhere yet. And I'm not taking any action. I'm not drafting any legislation yet. But I am asking the question, do we need a legislative solution, as a way to shore up, your ability to get this permitted? And it's an interesting dance because, of course, we are confident that the DEQ through the RAC will create the rule that you need. And you are 31 days from sine die, so I will offer that. And I will keep you updated as we move through June. And I'm sure Mary's going to have questions for me about that offline, but I don't have anything to add other than what I just shared. Let's see. Mayor mentioned the June 25th invitation will be forthcoming. I've been in contact with Marion County. They're the ones that are putting that groundbreaking together. So when I see that invitation come through, I will forward it on to all of you. And that's what I have for my update. Any questions? Other than from Mary. So.
I will ask a question.
Yeah.
How soon does the rule need to be in place for us to start working to get the permit? How soon does that have to be?
I think what I've heard from Marion County, and I see that Chris is on the line, but I'll give him a minute to think. I think that the EQ had initially said they would try to have this in front of the EQC by November, and Marion County was comfortable with that.
Well, I was just wondering exactly what that time frame was, because listening to what you're talking about, unless we were to have a special session, and if we have a special session, I'll try.
Yeah, so
Hang on, Janet's not quite done yet.
The soonest we could, unless you could somehow get somebody to move right now, the soonest we could get it for the legislature would be February 1, January 15th or so. So that's all, my mind's thinking legislative timelines, that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think the concern is that the the reason that I started having conversations about this is because, there does seem to be a more, technical focus on this,
Yeah,
which should be discussed, that's
Mhm.
fine. And any legislative fix wouldn't be seeking to address all of the basins. If we were going to do a legislative request, it would be a specific exception for this project only.
Yeah.
To get it across the finish line so that the $50 million investment that the legislature just made doesn't get squandered. So it would be a very narrow,
Yeah.
very narrow request. It wouldn't attempt to take on everything that the Rules Advisory
Yeah.
Committee is taking on, and so allow them to continue to do their good work, but just carve an exception for this one. So,
okay, my mind's just thinking
yep, timelines.
timelines.
As we see the conversation being expanded, to not just this basin, to the other basins, to a direct discharge conversation, to technical aspects of this permitting process, it is becoming obvious that this is a much bigger, longer conversation. And this project has got to get across the finish line, so.
Okay, very good. Questions for Laura? Anybody on Zoom have any questions that they would like to ask Laura at this point? If nothing's there, then we will move on and, Chris, how about you? You got a county update for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, real quick housekeeping question. Regarding the discussion on the schedule, I have a nice graphic pulled up that actually does give a visual for that, but I'm not sure if that would work for this venue. Laura, would everyone be able to see it on your end if I were to share that?
We could all look.
Only if they huddled around me behind
Yeah.
this.
Okay, maybe it's a,
Maybe it's a July meeting. Unfortunately, the screen here in Mill City is broken. So,
okay, I mean, we can always make that a July topic, so
Okay,
no problem.
and
Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry. Ken Woodward dropped off and then texted me, please let me back in. And so we'll see if he comes back. Okay.
All right, no problem. Yes, so just if I'll go on with the county's update then. So first of all, big milestone construction has begun on the Mill City Treatment Facility. I should say the Mill City and Gates Treatment Facility. I think the name is in flux, but that's what we're calling it. We're not calling it the Water Pollution Control Facility anymore because of the similarity with the WPCF permit. So to avoid that, we're kind of calling it, right now, it's the Mill City and Gates Wastewater Treatment Facility. And strangely enough, nobody ever wants to have a sewer plant named after them. So I think that's probably going to stick. Yeah, so as Chair Kirst mentioned, the county board's office is holding a groundbreaking on June 25th. Just for clarity, the groundbreaking is a board's office function, not a public works function, so I don't want to speak for them on that. I will just encourage everybody who's attending, please work with Laura to coordinate with the board's office. We do have to work with our contractor on site safety, so we do want to make sure we know the number of attendees and have adequate parking. There won't be any active construction at the time, but we want to make sure everybody has a place to park and that we kind of have a sense of how many people are going to be there. So we're working with our contractor on that, and then the board's office is handling everything to do with the event itself. But we're very excited to see that happening. Prior to the groundbreaking, there's going to be some activity out at the site as they're staging and getting ready. So you may have been down there and already seen the trailers. Something else they're going to do in advance is to clear the site because the entire site is covered in invasive Scotch broom, and you really can't see anything, let alone work around it. So our contractor is going to be clearing the site, and as soon as we have cultural concurrence from SHPO, as soon as we have that, then we're actually going to scarify the site, which means we take it down 6 inches. That means the Scotch broom can't come back. So that'll kind of clear it out, and you'll see just basically a whole bunch of open dirt, and you'll really see how much gravel is at that site. Every single one of our geotechnical probes has hit boulders and cobbles, so should be really interesting once we get below the topsoil and you see what's kind of down there. It also emphasizes why that spot was chosen, because that kind of gravelly base is it's kind of the site of the prehistoric riverbed. And that's why we're discharging there. We can't go any further away because it's basically compacted clay. So, as our geologist is fond of saying, we didn't choose the site. Glacier 100,000 years ago chose the site, and we just found it. So once we clear out that site, I think we'll have a good visual depiction of that. So that's pretty much the main work that's going to be done before the groundbreaking ceremony. They're going to be doing more staging, getting temporary power out there as well. Some additional work that's somewhat kind of below ground and not really visible. But we won't see any major deliveries or any impacts happening. They did implement the road closure for that portion of Fairview. It's a closure with local access so that everybody who needs to go around it can and has been contacted, so they can get to those small number of houses back there. But the idea is to keep through traffic off of Fairview. For those of you familiar, it's that part where Fairview's a gravel road that kind of winds and switchbacks down the hill. There's very little traffic on there already. We were seeing like 1 car per hour. Those are very small numbers, but we'll just, encourage those folks to drive around. There's plenty of other ways to go around there if you're not going to somewhere that's accessible at that point. And so that's gonna kind of be the traffic control for pretty much the entire project. We're not seeing a lot of complex traffic control. We're not doing any major road closures. We might do some more soft closures along a little bit further west in Fairview when we tie into the water line, but it's not going to be a very heavy impact to build the treatment plant. Now, when at some point when we are able to proceed with a force main and a collection system in gates, that's going to be a lot different. That's where we're doing a lot of work within city streets themselves. So we'll be interfacing a lot with this body and with gates as we kind of work through the traffic control on that project. But that's already a couple years out, so we're not quite there yet. Just what I want to make sure that everybody knows is that we are going to be reaching out to Mill City. We've asked to get on their council agenda for, I believe, the 10th, second Tuesday of the month. So that we can just come and give the Mill City Council an update on construction, make sure they know who to contact if there's any concerns, or if there's any citizen questions or complaints, we'll make sure they have our contact info. And then also for people to make sure they know there's not any planned utility shutoffs as part of this. It's always important to communicate that because there's other reasons why a water shutoff could occur, or someone's line breaks. So we just want to make sure everybody knows we're not planning any utility cutoffs on this project. So by and large, most people won't notice much except for a visual impact as they see the site. And during the operation of the crushing yard, they might hear it, but we're going to comply with Mill City noise ordinance. So that impact should be limited to daytime hours. And also, since it's so far outside of town, we don't expect it to be that much of a nuisance, frankly. But that crushing yard is huge because it allows us to not only dispose of all the boulders that we're taking up, but we also don't have to import gravel to the site if we can take the boulders, crush them on site, and turn them into the aggregate that we need. So that in total was a huge savings to the project, which helped bring us in under budget for the available funds we had. We're very excited about that. And it's also reduces all the environmental impact because we're not generating a lot of truck trips. So this cut down on our truck traffic to the site by somewhere in the neighborhood of 80%. So all that's to say, we're really happy we don't have to export and import. Keeps the traffic impact down. There won't be, you know, lines of trucks going down the bridge or anything like that. The most of the traffic that you will see will be equipment deliveries. There'll be some material delivery, but it's largely going to be, you know, one-offs here and there. We'll be bringing a pump or we're bringing in a basin or something like that. So on the whole, this should be a low impact project that occurs on the edge of the city. And after the groundbreaking, it's going to be just a lot of pipe, a lot of working on the road, on the site. And then when we start to get into the really interesting stuff early next year, that's where the basins are going vertical and all the treatment works are going in. Then we'll plan to circle back and bring the spotty out there when there's more interesting installations to look at. So we're all very excited to see all of you at the groundbreaking. I know NSSA is a top priority for their invite list. So Laura, you should be getting that soon. Before I go on, any questions about construction? Sorry, Mr. Chair, I think you're on mute.
There, we're unmuted.
There we go.
No questions from this room.
Okay. Oh, great. Yep. Just for clarity, right now, there's no construction work planned or happening in Gates this year. But because we do have an environmental and archaeological consultant out there doing some work, people might see field crews. That's part of the NEPA process that we go through for federal funding. So there may also see surveyors, but there's no actual construction work, no removal of pavement, nothing to do with this project. County may have other projects. I haven't checked in lately, but not sewer.
Okay, very good.
Yep. Okay, so in terms of timing, obviously, as we mentioned last month, a bill was passed that allowed us to begin construction. We're very grateful to everyone who helped us get that in place. So in terms of timing now, the real key date is in July. Round about July 15th is our best projection. That's our kind of drop dead date where we actually need to have a discharge permit in place. So we've talked a lot about the NPDES permit. That's the permit that allows the discharge to Waters of the United States. And that needs to be in hand by the time we start to bring the reactor online and start spinning up a lot of the equipment. Again, we push that date back as much as we can by using clean water and recirculating it to bring some of the equipment online. But by July is really when we need to be a functional plant that can start to have, you know, live biology. The microorganisms that act to treat the plant, you can't just bring them online at the end of the project. It's kind of a process. We're actually going to take sludge from the Staten plant, bring it over and use that to seed the reactor. But it takes time for the microorganisms to adjust to a new environment. And there's a lot of testing involved to make sure everything is working correctly. So that's the timeline we're looking at. And that's kind of the timeline that's been in place ever since we first made our petition, because we know that the NPDES process is not a fast one. It's just the nature of it. It's a very complex permit. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in it. It's not something you get in, you don't get it in 30 days or 60 days. It's very aggressive and hopeful to think an NPDES permit can go through in 6 months. In some circumstances, it can be done. And I'm talking for like a municipal treatment plant. Obviously, other types of NPDES permits have different timelines. But in consultation with the DEQ, they've given us different timelines. That 6 months might be pushing it. More realistic might be more. I won't speak for the DEQ and what the final timeline is, but we as responsible project managers need to create enough time for that to take place. And so, that's where when we talked about the rule change procedure concluding in November, we weren't necessarily comfortable because our nature as project managers is to assume that not everything goes according to plan and you need to have some buffer. So it was close and aggressive, but potentially doable. And we were just looking to see how we can best work with that. Now that it's the rule change process may be pushing back a little bit, and so we're kind of getting into critical timelines. And so, we just want to make sure that we're able to have that NPDES permit in hand at a time when the project needs it in order to start commissioning the plant. So that's kind of where our critical timelines are. Like I said, I have a nice little graphic that I probably can't show because it won't show up on your screen, tiny print. Maybe in July, and when we reconvene in July, we might have some more solutions. But that's just something that we keep our eye on as a matter of project delivery to make sure that this project can be fully expended in December. If we had a large amount of funding that was not tied to ARPA timelines, then that would give us more room. Unfortunately, the only other funding we received actually has to be spent first. It has to be spent in 2025. So, and that was the state's IGA of money through HCS. So, that's the only non-federal funding we have that can meet that timeline. So we're still on the 2026 timeline of ARPA, and we're just trying to problem solve and troubleshoot to make sure that the funds can be used on time.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing your graphs at our next meeting. With that, we're gonna move forward and do agency updates. Mary, what have you got for us with DEQ?
Well, as Laura said, we finished our second Rules Advisory Committee, and this month we're going to have what's a technical discussion. So we're kind of switching and just having a conversation about permitting 101, because we do want to separate out the rulemaking process versus the permitting process. They're two different functions. And we think about the three basin rule as kind of like a gatekeeper, if you will. Do you meet certain criteria? Yes or no? And then if the answer is yes, then you could proceed to get a permit application into us. If the answer is no, then you can't have an NPDES permit depending on what you're doing. So basically, so Chris, I think you meant July 15th of 2026 is when you're looking for an NPDES permit, not July 15th of 2025, because that's impossible.
Sorry for not clarifying that. Yes, thank you. July 2026.
Right. So he is right that it would take, 6 months would be pretty fast for DEQ with our public process. So, and be able to go in front of the EQC. That probably won't change with a wastewater treatment plant of this nature. And so that's 2 comment periods, if you will, one for the draft permit and then one in front of the EQC, and then you got to finalize it. So 8 months is realistic for that. And we are adding an additional month to the schedule for the 3 basin rule because to accommodate this technical meeting, because we want people focused on the right things, and not try to have the 3 basin rule change a permitting process, which again, they're just 2 separate functions for DQ. We can accept an application for an NPDES permit. Obviously, we can't issue anything because we can't do that in the 3 basin rule. So we were anticipating that Marion County would submit an application as complete as possible, knowing, of course, that we don't have the rule done yet, but acting as if the rule was there already. They would give us everything so that we could start working, evaluating the information and seeing if we need more information and start working on the permit. We can't issue anything until the rule's been advised, or if you do a statutory one-off saying this particular project can go through the permitting process, I mean, that's fine. So we're still planning on November 2026, 25 to go in front of the EQC. That might slip. It might be in December. We have to do a special session with them to make that happen. We're down to 3 commissioners, so we're getting pretty thin on the ranks. I don't know if they'll give us any more commissioners between now and when this decision has to be made, but it's not your problem, but it's just there. So I'm gonna stop there to see if there's any questions for me.
Questions? Anyone have any questions for Mary? None in this room. I don't see any on Zoom either.
Nope, okay. Oh, one more thing is there's 2 pieces that the county needs, besides changing the rule about constructing without a permit. You also need DEQ's approval for the plans for the project, and so we're working on our approval letter right now. It's an internal review, so once they have those 2 pieces, technically, they're good to go 100% for construction, so.
Nice, nice. Well, it's good that everything is still moving forward. I know that we're still on a lot of time crunches. Everybody's feeling the pressure, but the work that's been done and the work that's left to do is all very important, and I thank everybody for all their involvement in that. Agency updates, do we have any other agencies on here that have anything to update us on? I don't believe so.
Nobody else
And
but
that, well, you are a trooper because you're at every meeting, Mary. We appreciate that. So that really concludes everything that we have on tonight's agenda. Unless anybody has any questions or comments moving forward. If not, I don't see any questions or anything. So we will go ahead and just close tonight's meeting. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you.
thank you, everybody.